There is a tremendous fear of being labeled a bigot or a racist or an Islamophobe, which, by the way, applies to you whether you are inside Islam or whether you're outside Islam.
Any critic of the radical Islamic wing is branded as an enemy. You cannot disagree with them. You automatically fall into the category of an enemy. You can't, there is no debate with these people.
My new film, Jihad in America, The Grand Deception, explores how Islamists intimidate their critics into silence to control media coverage in order to suppress any discussion of radical Islam. During a recent discussion about the film, panelists kept returning to this point.
Anytime you condemn them, anytime you point out, the machinations and the deceit, they're going to label you an Islamophobe. And who wants to be that? It was just a technique to stigmatize their critics.
It is also a convenient crutch to use when the facts are stacked against you. In 2010, the Illinois State Police invited an imam named Kifa Mustafa to be its first ever Muslim chaplain. Mustafa's public image had portrayed him as a moderate and someone active in interfaith dialogue. But Mustafa was also part of a Hamas support network in the United States called the Palestine Committee. It was created by the Muslim Brotherhood to help Hamas politically and financially. Mustafa was a paid fundraiser and performed in a singing troupe at Hamas rallies and fundraisers. Here, the troupe sings the praises of Hamas and Jihad. Shocked by these disclosures, the Illinois State Police rescinded its offer for Mustafa to serve as a chaplain. The Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, which also has its origins in the Palestine Committee, cried foul. Rather than arguing the facts, however, its spokesman attacked me personally.
This individual, Stephen Emerson, he has a track record of anti-Muslim innuendo where he attacks Muslim leaders with guilt by association and other types of exaggerations, half-truths in order to smear them and in order to instigate fear in government and other agencies so as not to associate and engage these individuals. So as far as we're concerned, his work was run-of-the-mill. To our shock and dismay, the Illinois State Police Department caved in to this form of Islamophobia and fear-mongering.
In fact, everything we wrote in exposing Mustafa's radical beliefs and actions were taken from official court records. And when Mustafa sued the state police, a federal judge ruled that he had no case and granted the state summary judgment. CAIR tried to use the same tactics to discourage people from seeing The Grand Deception. After an Orange County Register editorial writer praised the film, CAIR's top Los Angeles official wrote a rebuttal, but Hussein Alouche never identified anything in the film that he found incorrect or offensive. Instead, he called me names and cast me as a bigot. I even offered to meet with Alouche in a public forum to discuss the film, but he never responded. When people do see the film, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Judges honored it as the best documentary film at festivals in Beverly Hills, New York, and South Carolina. But that hasn't stopped Islamists and their supporters from trying to suppress the film. Roberto Rizzo, founder and president of the New York City International Film Festival, said he was lobbied not to accept The Grand Deception as soon as the festival's website posted that it had been accepted.
We got a lot of emails and calls because they said, oh, you shouldn't show this film, it's because it's bad, give a hatred to people.
Such criticism rang hollow because Rizzo saw the film and found nothing in it at all objectionable. He invited the critics to the screening and even offered them a chance to challenge producers during an open question and answer session, but none showed up. Instead, they said, shame on the festival for showing it.
I said, no, it's not a shame of the film festival. I want to show the film is going to be shown. You're not going to tell me why to remove the film because the film doesn't inflate any hatred to any race, to anybody, to any religion, nothing. It's clear. And it's very unfair when people didn't see the film, tell me what to do with the film festival. That really infuriate me.
This PowerPoint, obtained by the Investigative Project on Terrorism, contains a slide that shows how CARE similarly tries to manipulate others in the media.
It is very important. Media in the United States is very gullible. Okay? When they will see you have something, especially as a Muslim, if you have something to say, they'll come running to you and take advantage of that.
This manipulation has a significant impact on public perception and government policy. For 5 years, it has been official government policy to avoid using words like Islamist and Jihad when discussing Islamic terrorism.
I still don't understand why we can't talk about Forthood, in the way that it should have been discussed, or why certain words have been redacted from governmental agencies in a country where if we can't name a problem, we certainly can't solve it. That's really the philosophy in medicine. If you can't identify a pathology, you cannot come up with a solution.
Physician Kanta Ahmed, a proud Muslim, advocates for pluralism and a contemporary brand of religion that offers spiritual guidance while embracing liberty and democracy. But those positions, which often conflict with national Islamist groups, are largely shunned by American publications.
One of the people taped undercover was talking about how the media is so interested in the Muslim voice. Use it to your advantage. Let me tell you my experience, which is that they're interested in a certain kind of correct Muslim voice. Mine is not a correct voice or a popular voice, which is an attempt to conceal or control this conversation.
That kind of thinking pervades American academics as well, but Boston University professor Richard Landis is an exception.
They're terrified of saying something that might offend Muslims, and so as a result you really have a terrible dilemma amongst academics. Anybody who doesn't line up is essentially intimidated into silence. They get marginalized and so on.
Public forums such as this one become all more important when the conversation about radical Islam is suppressed in so many places such as universities.
I'd like to make one point about what's going on in academia, which is that there is a sort of radical, there's a sort of what you might call a red-green alliance between sort of radical political leftists on the one hand and the Islamists, both of whom view sort of Western imperial colonialism as the enemy that must be destroyed. Academia is no longer, I mean, the term academia is supposed to mean freedom of speech. Academia is no longer a place where there really is freedom of speech. And the tragedy is that it's precisely people who represent the values that make academia possible who are the ones being silenced.
We refuse to be silenced. Please look forward to our ongoing series of discussions on the growing influence of radical Islam in American society. And check back with us for information on our next event.